Next up is Greg Anderson on operationally focused pen testing.
Thank you. All right. So it definitely looks like the audience has thinned out after lunch. So how many people in the audience are either pen testers internally for their organization or perform it as an external party? Yeah, and my entire team got it. All right. What about procurers of pen tests? We have any of those in the audience? People who are going to... All right. Not a whole lot. I'm surprised. All right. So this talk is going to kind of help you guys work together, I hope. It's kind of got a dual audience to it. So I'm hoping a lot of this information can be used by both parties, the pen tester side to make you better pen testers, to help you deliver better products, as well as on the consumer side to help you expect more from your pen testers. So a little bit about me. Right now I work for CERT's Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Team. The team's job is performing pen tests for Department of Homeland Security, federal, local, some state, and other municipalities. Previously to that, I've been in IT help desk since pretty much high school. Done network administration, domain administration, security analysis, and previously a little bit of GRC work too in the nuclear industry. It's my follow me information if you'd like to know more. So we're going to talk about pen testing a little bit in here, but why pen testing, right? So we have pretty much a decade of high-profile data breaches. In at least the last 5 years, we've seen a lot more of data breaches, which has caused this real increased observation, awareness of cybersecurity, a lot from the general public side, even more so than the IT side as normal. What we've got now is governance frameworks starting to address pen testing at a little bit of a high level. They're at least mentioning it now. Regulations and compliance are starting to demand more. There's been a lot of reference to PCI. They're at least one of the regulations that are saying, hey, do pen testing on a regular basis. So that's at least a good thing. And then even mass media coverage, like some of the last few data breaches, especially Target, you've actually seen people in the news talking about, well, when was the last time they had a pen test done? So it's really kind of interesting to see that kind of progression towards pen testing in just, general public. But why pen testing? Who really cares? Why is it important? So current risk analysis methods are a little bit subjective, believe it or not. So we have things like probability, likelihood, impact, and even threat actors. Some of these things can be subjective for the people performing the risk analysis. Their biases can interfere with it. And in other times, it can be downright volatile. So you might not consider hacktivism in your risk analysis mechanism, but then your CEO makes some statement on the news and you've offended, all sorts of people that now want to target your organization from a hacking standpoint that was never considered in your risk management profile before. And even on the worst side of that, sometimes you can deliberately alter your risk analysis formulas and those sorts of things by skewing the inputs to reflect the output that you want. So, long story short, objective risk analysis takes very disciplined and mature organization to do it effectively. And one of the things that pen testing can do is help you validate these conclusions that you've made about your risk. So ongoing cycles of performing your risk analysis, validating with pen testing, readdressing your risk analysis, going back to pen testing again, can help fine-tune this maturity over time. On the other side, demand has created sort of this low supply of quality pen tests that are out there in the world today. We see a lot of things like just validated vulnerability scans passing for compliance mechanisms. Yep, check the box, we did our pen test. In other cases, we see scope being so tightly constrained that it doesn't reflect reality at all. But again, you get that compliance checkbox. This does happen a lot in PCI. I don't mean to beat up on PCI. I know it's been on a few slides here. But a lot of times you'll see, well, that's not our payment processing systems, so we're not going to address that during a pen test. But in reality, it does provide an attack path into your payment processing environment, so it should be addressed. And another thing here is their technology focus as opposed to business focus. We always forget as technology professionals that technology only lives in an organization to serve the business. So we need to address these things from the business side as well, not just patch this, fix this. And they're performed in a vacuum, right? It's just a pen test, it's a report, it goes into someone's file, somebody might look at it someday, but there's really no interaction with the rest of the business on a lot of these things. So the end results, we're drastically decreasing the business value of the pen tests. There is generally a negative perception, especially in compliance space. We have this really high cost service that we're providing and nobody really cares. It's the same cost as the other checkboxes in our compliance process. And a lot of times there's this adversarial nature with the pen test, right? You're coming in to test our ability to do our jobs is the way it's viewed a lot of times. And at the end of the day, we're just not meeting the expectations on the previous slide of what we intended for a pen test to be. So bottom line, there's a bit of a disconnect, right? We have what we expected pen test to be to help us validate risk, but then we're not living up to those mechanisms, right? So where do we go from here? How do we bridge that gap? How do we reconnect our expectations to what's actually being delivered? So I think first and foremost, we have to identify what we do well, because as pen testers, there's a lot of things that are done very well. And we should keep doing those things. I'm not saying anything's changed there. But we have to have that self-analysis to actually say, okay, we have areas that need improved, so let's look at improving those. And here's a kind of breakdown of some of the things that we do from, if you look at kind of the PTES or other standards, the breakdowns of the phases of the pen test. So on the left, we kind of have our good side, which is pretty much we're going to see a lot of the technical stuff, right? Recon, our OSINT capabilities, scanning and enumeration, our exploitation. These are things we often focus our time on, our own professional development on, and we do really good at those things. But on the other side of like our methodology, we've got pre-engagement capabilities, actually scoping these engagements out so they provide value to the business. Post-exploitation, where we actually kind of go after the crown jewels. We actually address what matters to the business from a technical standpoint. And then actually conveying this information so it means something to the business. So really the rest of this talk is going to kind of take a detour from where most pen test talks go and really address the right side of this the methodology here, where we're focusing on sort of the soft skills that make pen testers good. So bottom line, pen testing is more of an art than a science. There's a lot of things we have to fine tune. It's not just plug it into a formula or with a lot of the automation stuff we've been hearing. I think someday we can automate pen testing, but right now humans have to do it. So we got to kind of fine tune those capabilities. Pen testers are great at technology. We've always been good at tech, and we always seek new ways, like attending this conference, to learn new things about technology. At the same time, though, we need to spend the same amount of effort fine-tuning our business acumen so that we actually do these things better for the business, because again, this is a business service, not a technical service. So here's kind of how this is going to break down for the rest of my agenda slides, like 10 slides in. Here's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the talk here. So we're going to talk about sort of that pre-engagement phase that we just looked at. We're going to talk about goal-oriented pen testing to help drive that along for the business. We're going to look at what the objective of the pen test actually is and kind of refresh our view of that, as well as look at how we report on some of these things. Let's talk beyond technologies to the business and look at who our audience actually is. So without further ado, a little bit on goal-oriented pen testing. So this isn't a new idea. I forget his name now. I knew it when I wrote the slide deck. But this is a concept that's been out for a while. I just haven't seen it got a whole lot of traction. But goal-oriented pen testing is really just defining an objective, a goal for the pen testers that's measurable. I used the SMART slide here, which I'm sure everybody hates because it's the same thing you see for your performance reviews. Making your goals, specific, measurable, and actionable. But there's some good things in this, right? Especially when we're looking at the pen testing standpoint. Because when organizations tell you, oh, we want you to come in and hack us. Okay, what does that mean? Or we need you to phish us or to show us you can exploit this. It doesn't provide a whole lot of understanding where do we manage expectations? What exactly do you want us to do? So instead of those kind of high-level statements, here are some examples of how we can actually leverage goal-oriented goals in our pen testing. So demonstrating the ability to exfiltrate PII from the HR systems, from an external network attack within the confines of your 2-week engagement. That's fairly clear. No, it doesn't specifically go into a lot of the rules of engagement type things that you'll talk about, but at least you have some type of focus now. And at the end of the day, this is going to help you manage a lot of your expectations in reporting. Another example here, compromise the domain admin credentials within a 30-day kind of reconnaissance and phishing campaign. Narrows your scope down to something you understand, know what we can do, kind of puts the boundaries around what's expected. And then again, we kind of have a last one here of just gaining undetected access to a secured network, in this case an ICS network within some red team engagement that takes a longer period of time. Kind of underscoring the fact that we want this to be somewhat stealthy, do those sorts of things over your 90-day engagement. Helps bring everything together. So what do we do to get there? This is all well and good, but how do we actually define it? So again, this is pre-engagement. This is talking about your scope with your business executives, or at least your points of contact within the organization. And you're really going to try and focus on identify why they're looking to perform this pen test in the first place, right? There's a reason there somewhere. And it may require some phishing, not that kind. We want to actually just kind of sounds weird coming from technology people, but have a conversation with them. Try asking some open-ended questions, not just yes/no questions. I listed some examples here, but there is no template for this. What do you hope to gain out of it? Kind of get them thinking about the process. What are your concerns? One of the things I like in here is ask them about their strengths instead of their weaknesses, right? Everyone loves talking about their strengths. When's the last time you were on a job interview and they started telling you how the company sucked? Ask them about their strengths first, and that's going to give you insight into where their weaknesses might be. And then you can outright ask them after they're comfortable talking about it, what are your weaknesses? And then what are your security concerns? This is often gets worded as what keeps you up at night. I know a lot of CIOs that sleep very well, so that might not be a valid question to ask. So why would this be important? So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but it's going to give the pen tester a clearer objective of what's being required from the pen test. Manages expectations. You know what's supposed to happen. The organization knows what they want. We're going to meet in the middle, and we're going to deliver exactly what's expected to the organization. And it's going to help them validate their risk. So if you're having this conversation with them at the beginning during scope definition, get a feel for what their risks are. Are they going to give you their risk analysis? Probably not. But through some of those questions, you can start to identify they're putting a lot of value here. We should look here for security vulnerabilities. And then use that in your report so they can use it later to validate their own risk conclusions. And if nothing else, it's going to make your reporting a lot easier. Pen testers hate reporting. I hate reporting. If you have a template already of what's being expected out of it, write to the expectations. Your job's almost done before you start, especially for the executive summary portion of it. All right, this section, redefining the objective. So we want to look at the pen tester's objective during the process here. So I hear a lot of times talking about pen testing, especially to the non-security specific audience, mostly more the IT operations personnel, about a pen test being, we want you to come in and find all of our vulnerabilities. Nope, not going to happen. Use a scanner. Scanners are much better at finding all of your vulnerabilities than a human is going to be. So the job of the pen tester is really to find a viable attack path. I don't care if you have 100 vulnerabilities. If I find the one that gives me access to your organization that has some impact to your organization, that's the one I'm going to use. I don't care about the rest of them. I'm in. So I want to use it to demonstrate the business impact. So like I said, once you're in, use it to go out and touch something, right? See what else is out there. Go after the crown jewels. And then identify measures to eliminate or minimize that attack path. So often these are technical attack paths, obviously. So how can we minimize that? How can we make that attack surface smaller? So that way the organization's risk is ultimately lower. And then reducing business impact is the end goal, right? If we can't eliminate the attack path, how do we mitigate risk? So of this analogy here, or this list here, most of the time these two things are addressed by pretty much every pen tester, right? We get an attack path, we get in, and we tell you how to fix those things that got us in. What we tend to slack on is what's the business impact of what we did, and how do we reduce the business impact? So we'll address those two things here. So in the post-exploitation phase, it's all about business impact. Carlos Perez actually has a great website where his slogan for the website is actually "Shell is just the beginning." I think that's a great analogy for this because it's the beginning. Now is where you can actually demonstrate what the service you're providing, demonstrate what value it has. The wrong answer here, why does the attack path matter? Well, we got domain admin and high fives and we're out. You look really ignorant when you do this sort of thing because domain admin really doesn't resonate well with the executives in the organization. They don't care. Okay, great. How does that matter to me? It's just too broad. Wrap it around in context that actually resonates with the organization. So instead, you're going to want to think about, okay, we got domain admin credentials. Where do they work? Obviously in the domain. What can we do with the credentials? What impact does this have on the business? So what systems did you gain access to? What value does that provide? That could be, your email systems, domain controllers, other systems, HRIS systems, anything where you can actually find valuable data from your scoping conversations that might allow them to understand their risk a little better. At the end of the day, how do we measure it though, right? Business impact means so many different things to so many different organizations. The one we often rely on is dollars and cents. It's easy. We're going to steal money from you or you're going to get a bad reputation, et cetera, et cetera. This is losing ground, I think, though. Kind of had a talk about this yesterday a little bit where we're seeing the stock market trend differ from the way it used to, right? So Target, Home Depot are some examples of this where, yeah, they took a huge hit financially from stock trading after their breaches, but then it rebounded not that long after that, far beyond where it had ever been. So if you're talking to the CFO about, well, you're going to get bad press from this, they're going to say, who cares? It's temporary. We're going to rebound. Customers are still going to come here. Bye-bye. So if you want to use dollars, put it in the context of their incident response, their capabilities, that one-time fee that's gone. So I just read a statistic recently on phishing costing, just phishing, we're not talking data breach, costing organizations roughly $3.7 million a year. So use that number instead of focusing on their stock market performance, right? And that 3.7 million is their incident response, their lost productivity, their containment, there's recovery, and all those sorts of things. That number is going to resonate well with the organization versus you're going to get a bad reputation. That kind of ties into production. So if, lost productivity, some other things are uptime. So if you're, uptime, or if you think of like Amazon, shipping organizations, those sorts of things, if their control systems that you may have compromised during a pen test go down, they can't ship things anymore, that's a big deal. Those are things that need to be looked at. One that's getting actually increased popularity, search engine optimization. Very valuable to people. If you go into some organizations and tell them that new ciphers are going to increase their search engine hits, they're going to get placed higher, done. That issue's fixed already. So put it in context that they understand. Learn the business. Don't just assume you know everything because you hacked in. And relate the technical findings that you have, because they are very valuable. Relate them to what matters to the business, though. Get in their heads a little bit. Why is it important? I guess we kind of touched some of this. So it gives a lot more credibility to your technical findings because a lot of times they don't understand what you're talking about. I was listening to the crypto talk going, I don't understand any of this, but I'm sure it's great. And creates a driver for remediation, right? If you can put this in terms that they can understand and they can use, now they've got a little fire lit under them to actually get these things taken care of, rather than a report just sitting on someone's desk somewhere. So our last section here, there's actually two in this one, our reporting phase. So we often think about technology so much. And this is a quote that I put in here specifically for who it came from in the organization that I thought was valuable. But too many think that the solution to most problems is a technology control rather than people and process. And I thought this actually came from a workforce development article talking about people fresh out of college always wanted to use technology solutions for everything. But the fact that it came from the VP of core security, who makes, you can criticize it all you want, there are flaws in it, but one of the most powerful pen testing platforms on the market, so they do some of their own vulnerability analysis. The fact that this pen testing VP is saying that, there's people and processes involved in this too, that kind of resonates with exactly this topic here, where it's not just about technologies. That goes right down to the pathway of we've kind of been pigeonholed as this technology service. But in the end, that's kind of our fault. We focus so heavily on technologies, we have to get better at that kind of business side of things as well. And these technical findings that we have are often linked to larger problems. They're symptoms, right? You went into the doctor's office and said, I feel sick. And he's like, well, yeah, you've got a cough. Yeah, you're probably not going to go to that doctor anymore. You want to know why you have a cough, right? These are drivers. There's human-driven processes underneath these things that actually cause the symptoms that you're finding in a pen test. So we actually need to become familiar with these, understand the operational deficiencies that actually lead to these findings. So as an example, right? So a pen tester takes advantage of some telnet vulnerability. The system happens to be listening on telnet and SSH. So our tip, and the vulnerability is 2 months old. So that's an important part. So our typical recommendation is going to be, well, there's a vulnerability there, so you should apply the patch. And you've got 2 redundant services listening, so disable one if you're not using it. That's great. That fixes that one problem, but it only addresses that one problem. There's probably other systems in their environment that you didn't compromise that have the same problem. So you're not looking at why this problem exists in the first place. A better way to do this would be, well, of course, apply the missing patch, right? You need to do that. However, do that soon, and then look at why was that there in the first place. Let's look at your patch management program. Maybe you should reduce your patch window down to something 30 to 45 days, so you're not having 2-month-old patches that are out there in the wild, or missing patches that are out there in the wild. And then maybe in another 90 to 60 days, you probably have some configuration management issues, or you're not reviewing these things if you have both telnet and SSH on in your environment. And then later to a year, or 90 days to a year, establish some baseline configurations. Do some analysis on those periodically, check for deviations to the baseline, and then use your incident response program to respond to those if any deviations occur. Providing this roadmap of services like this or ideas like this is drastically going to improve the value that you're providing as a pen tester. But it's difficult, right? We're technical people. We don't always understand the operational side of things in organizations, so how do we get there? Well, I like to think of it in the context of you're all smart people. What would have stopped your hack, right? If they would have patched this 2 months ago or a month before you got there, that would have stopped your hack. Start thinking in those kind of concepts of what human actions may have gotten in the way of me moving forward in my attack path. And then how do you make the full recommendation? Well, there's tools out there to do this. So the critical security controls are very accessible to a technical audience. They're all technical controls. And there's mappings of those things that exist to the more operational controls, like NIST and ISO. So if you can digest the technical critical controls and understand those, follow the mappings to what operational controls in an organization would address these technical findings, and then kind of make the full pathway for them. So go from your technical critical controls to the NIST 853 or ISO standards, and then write that up into your recommendation. So that way you have kind of this full path of the environment you understand, being heavily technical as a pen tester, to something that the organization can understand operationally and actually implement that'll address a broader vulnerabilities than just the technical findings that you had. So why is this important? So we're addressing beyond that superficial patch, right? Patching this system, there's 20 other systems out there that need patched as well. And it provides them a roadmap. So instead of just saying, here's a list of things you can do, here's a prioritized list of things that are going to provide you more value over the long run than just applying these patches that we found. And it's going to provide them a way to address vulnerabilities that you didn't find, that they didn't know they had, or that aren't even published vulnerabilities yet, right? You can stop 0 days. That's an amazing idea, right? Good cybersecurity hygiene, what this allows you to do, can stop 0 days. And you're going to identify more than just that preventive control. So often we think in fix it, prevent it from ever happening. We can actually identify those detective and response mechanisms that can go forward into helping them have a better security posture. At the end of the day, it's going to significantly increase the business value you're providing. So if nothing else, you might get paid more as a pen tester. All right, speaking to your audience. So this is kind of a big one. So this is my opinion. So who reads your pen test report, right? Executives, the managers of staff who actually implement stuff, and then that technical staff who actually goes and implements things. Each of these audiences needs something specific or different out of their pen test or out of that report. However, most pen testers write their reports as if they're being read by other pen testers. They want to look cool, and yeah, that's fine. You know, that stuff's fun. But at the end of the day, that's not who's reading your report in most cases. So we have kind of the three audiences here. So we have executives. So the report section that they get, makes sense, would be the executive summary. Their primary concern that you need to communicate in the executive summary is going to be the business impact and how do we move forward, right? What impact does it have on us? Where do we go from here? One approach, express business impact in terms that matter to the business. So like we talked about, dollars and cents if it's appropriate, supplies, production, uptime, SEO, whatever the case may be. It's going to be different for every business. Then briefly summarize your findings in terms of operational and management controls, not patches, right? You should not read about MSO 8067 in an executive summary. Your findings should be tactical. They should be here and now, right? This is what we found, completely factual. Help relate the findings to that goal of the pen test, like we talked about previously. So if your goal was very specific, how did your findings, how did your attack path relate to that goal? And try and keep the jargon and CVEs, MS numbers, like I mentioned, those should stay out of the executive summary. Those are for later. And focus on remediation, right? We want to talk about the findings, but we want to focus on moving forward, like I said. So focus on remediation, something strategic, something that they can really grasp a hold of and start holding people below them accountable for. Address the big picture. Talk about programs, not systems. Within the next section, so managers of staff is your next audience. Their primary section of the report should be the main body of the report. That should be theirs. It should have a nice flow to it. It shouldn't be interrupted by plethoras of tables and data and outputs. Just the main body that's concise. Primary concern there is going to be remediation, right? Again, we want to know what's broken, but more importantly, they want to know how to fix it. Summarize your IDs, your finding IDs, title, severity, etc. They need to know that information, but they don't need, a book about it. Address critical and high priority findings first, right? That's what you're going to want to do, even if it's just patch it, right? That needs addressed first if it's critical. And then start looking at quick win operational stuff. So like we had on the previous example, start looking at maybe reducing your patch window if that's appropriate. Start evaluating for changes, or looking at your configuration management program to see if it can be approved, those quick win type things. Then long term, you should have strategic type goals in there for them. So incident response to changes in your configurations. That way, if anything does change, you have another port enabled now, go in there and identify that through your incident response program. Then your technical staff. So this is a section where pen testers tend to do really well at. These should be in your appendix, though. They should not be part of your main report. These are something that should be torn off your report and then handed out to the people who actually need to do things technical. Primary concern, technical findings. No surprise there. You should have some detailed attack narrative in here. It shouldn't just be a list of findings. So some context around what you did, why you did it, and how it impacted them. Things like the tools you use, the commands you use, the host you targeted, where'd you gain a foothold, where'd you move to after that. Something that's kind of nice to see that I've seen in some pen test reports is the validation. This is how we actually found the vulnerability we exploited. Then, if they come back to it later down the road, they fix it, they patch it, they can use that string to actually validate it on themselves that it's been fixed. And another important thing is give credit where credit's due. There's a lot of things that slow you down during a pen test. So give credit. Don't make it just all the bad stuff about them. It's really going to help that relationship if you're actually saying good things about them in the report. And your detailed list of findings. I'm not going to tell you what you need to include in that. But tailor your severity, descriptions or recommendations to the audience. Don't just make it copy and paste. That's fine as a basis, but a critical vulnerability on one system might not be critical on another system. It just depends on what it's performing. So tailor it to the people you're actually talking to and the systems you've targeted. And then again, the tools, commands, methods you've used to actually use to find it. But why is it important? Who really cares? It's just a report. So it's the product deliverable. This is the proof you actually did something during your pen test and you didn't just sit there for 2 weeks. And each audience gets much greater usability out of it, right? If your executives have something to hold your managers accountable for and your managers have something that they're looking to their technical staff to do and it's concisely written, they're all getting value out of it and they can use it going forward. And again, adds value to the business and you as a pen tester, right? They're getting value out of how they can use it. You're getting value out of it because you performed a better service and you can increase your billing rates if you'd like to. So some key takeaways from this. So for the pen testers in the audience, security transcends technology. It's not just about the exploits. There was actually a good conversation yesterday about the 12 months or something before somebody said they've actually fired an exploit. It's all about usage, the operational processes. They're using the same passwords, those sorts of things in an organization. Broaden your skill set to understand the business. There are so many other aspects to how a business runs and the technology they run on. And at the end of the day, it's going to make you a better pen tester, right? If you're thinking about these operational aspects, what human things can do to get in the way of your engagement. And it's positioned you as a partner instead of a supplier of just a service, right? You're there to help them, you're there to collaborate with them, you're there to understand their problems, to help them get through it. And it helps them long past the engagement, right? It's not just fix this and we're going to go away. If you provide them that roadmap, you provide them those operational ideas, they're going to have more things to digest for a longer period of time to help them over the long run. And at the end of the day, the adversarial nature that we talked about, you're coming in to tell them all these things they're doing wrong, but if you're there to partner with them, to collaborate with them, you're going to start breaking down the adversarial nature of the engagement and, again, make you more of a partner. From the business side, so the consumers of pen tests, so you can kind of change how you think about pen tests. If you're thinking about it from just that technology standpoint, think about it from the more operational standpoint. If your pen tester is finding certain things in your organization, why are those things there? Why are those technical things there? It can provide you a lot of insight into your risk analysis that you've done in the past to help you validate what you've done. Is it accurate? Does it reflect reality? And then demand more from your pen testers, right? If the customers are demanding pen testers to provide more operational insight, well, guess what? Pen testers are going to start providing more operational insight, right? Supply and demand works. Ask for sample reports, shop around until you get what you want from the pen testers or somebody that can do it for you. But the big thing here is just focus on the programs that you're doing and how these pen tests can actually advance those programs. And that is the end of my time. So questions, comments, concerns? Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.